Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome everyone to the class of biology. Today, inshallah, we will discuss about chapter 11, that is reproduction in organisms. So, the chapter mainly discusses about reproductive methods employed in plants and animals. So, at first, inshallah, we will discuss about how reproduction takes place, sexual reproduction takes place in plants. And then afterwards we will go to the animal reproduction. So at first, what is called reproduction? We know from our classes, from class 6, that is reproduction is an activity, physiological activity to produce an offspring. So reproduction is a physiological activity by which an organism produces its offspring. So we know that reproduction methods can be one either of two types, and that is one is sexual reproduction and that is asexual reproduction. So now we will discuss about in which organisms we see sexual reproduction and in which organisms we observe asexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction happens sometimes in lower organisms like bacteria and fungi. Bacteria and fungi usually don't undergo sexual reproduction, but sometimes they employ this mechanism. But in higher plants, that is angiosperm and gymnosperms, they usually reproduce by sexual reproduction method. They have pollen grains and they have ovum in their flowers, and they meet together and new seed or fruit is produced. And in all higher organisms, their usual mode of reproduction is sexual. So now, in which organisms asexual reproduction takes place? Usually, asexual reproduction takes place in lower organisms like bacteria and fungi. So in bacteria and fungi, their usual method of reproduction is asexual. We know that by amitosis or binary fission, they reproduce by this way. And in lower plants like moss and fern, they produce spores by asexual reproduction method. And in higher plants, they can also reproduce by vegetative ways. For example, we can make some grafting, different type of grafting, and then make a new plant from this shoot or from this stem. Or sometimes we see that in stone chips plant, pathurkuchi plant, it propagates using its leaves. So in higher plants, it's also possible by vegetative reproduction methods, but usually they employ sexual reproduction methods. And now we will discuss about a type of sexual reproduction that is called anisogamous sexual reproduction. So what is called anisogamy? From chapter 1 we know that anisogamy is a type of sexual reproduction in which the opposite gametes fuse together, and these opposite gametes are different in size and shape. So that is called anisogamy. So another kind of sexual reproduction is called isogamy, where the two opposite gametes are identical in size and shape. So when two opposite gametes look different, that is called anisogamy. So in anisogamous sexual reproduction, we say that the male gamete is called sperm and female gamete is called ovum. And in case of humans or animals, mammals, that is human sperm that has a tail and that has a head and that can swim freely, and the ovum is very much larger in size compared to the sperm. And actually human ovum is the largest cell visible present in human body. For example, you see that this human ovum also contains some red blood cells attached to it. So human ovum is the cell that can be observed with the naked eye. So that is very much big compared to the human sperm. So these two gametes are different in size and shape. So this sexual reproduction is called anisogamous sexual reproduction. And now we will classify plants on the basis of presence of opposite gametes on the same body. So in your book you will find some terms such as monoecious plants, dioecious plant, and bisexual plant. So what does they mean? So at first, when we say about monoecious plants, that literally that means from the Greek source it says single house. That means within the single house, both opposite gametes are present in the same body. So we say the monoecious plants are the plants where the two kind of separate flowers reside on the same plant, and that means the same body contains male flower, that means that produces male gamete, and it also contains female flower that produces female gametes. We see such type of plants, such type of flowers in maize, banana, and coconut. For example, this figure shows a maize or corn plant, and the same plant contains two type of flowers. So at the top it contains male flowers, and at the bottom it contains female flowers, the green one. So from the male flowers, anthers are produced, and anthers fall downwards on the female flower, on the stigma, and from the stigma it fertilizes subsequently the ovum, and this green flower turns into eventually a mature corn or maize. So we see in the same plant it contains two different flowers, so that is why it is called monoecious plant. So as an example of another monoecious plant, so we look it further, the maize plant. So you see that on the top of the maize plant it contains male flowers. So male flowers are lighter in size, and they have yellow colored anthers. So from these anthers pollen grains are produced, and these pollen grains fall downward, and at the bottom what it contains female flowers. So you see the pink colored hair like projections that are actually stigmas of this female flower, and when pollen grains fall on the stigma, then eventually it travels through the stigma and the style, and then reaches to the ovary, and then produces a matured corn or maize after fertilization. And then we see the banana. So in banana plant we see there are two different kind of flowers. So at the bottom, that is called collar mocha, it contains male flowers, and at the and at the top part of it contains female flowers. And eventually when the male flowers are revealed and male flowers are opened up, and then the pollen grains come out from this, and eventually fertilizes the female flowers, and then female flowers turns into banana. And we see also there's two kinds of flower on coconut. Here we see that the small sized this small sized flower, they're called male flowers, and the ball like structures we see they are called female flowers. So what happens, the male flowers actually from the male flowers pollen grains are produced, and pollen grains eventually reach on the female flowers on this ball like structure, and then eventually fertilizes the female flower, and this female flower grows bigger to produce a coconut. So here we see that there's two kind of flowers, male and female. So now we will discuss about another type of plant that is called dioecious plant. So the Greek meaning of it is that two house. So why that is referred to two house? That means two different type of flowers are produced on two different plants. So some plants will contain some plants will contain the male flower only, and some plants will contain female flowers only. That means two type of flowers that cannot simultaneously exist on the same plant body. So two different plants will contain two different types of flowers. So that means male flower will be present on male plant, and female flower will be present on female plants. So we see such type of phenomenon in date palm or khejur gach. So here we will see that the date palm plants that contain male flowers, they are called male date palm. And so there is the left one, that is actually a male plant that contains only male flowers. The scientific name of Arabian date palm is Phoenix dactylifera. And the right one, that is also a male plant, but that is found the date palm in India subcontinent and Bangladesh, and that is also male plant. That is its scientific name is somewhat different, that is called Phoenix sylvestris. And this is also male plant. It contains only male flowers. So male flowers are lighter in size and shape, and its pollen grains are very much lightweight. They can be air pollinated. And when these male flowers eventually reaches to the female plant, female date palm plant, and inside the female plant we see that the female flowers are like nodules or like small balls. So when pollen grains reach to the female flowers, then it eventually fertilizes, and this female flowers eventually turns into dates. So we say that date palm is an example of dioecious plant. And the last one, the third category of plant, is called bisexual plant. So bisexual plants are the plants in which inside the same body, inside the same flower, that contains two type of gametes. Maximum flowers we see are of such type. For example, hibiscus, that is China rose, or rice, or mango, or most of the plants you see, they're actually bisexual plants. So here we see the hibiscus. The same flower contains simultaneously both male flower, a male part, and female part. For example, we see the yellow grain-like structures. They are anthers that produces male gametes, and inside the long tube structure there is style, and then at the center part of it, ovary. Inside the ovary, that contains egg or ovum. So we see that in the same plant it contains both opposite gametes. In the same flower, that contains two opposite gametes. And also in case of rice, we see that in an inflorescence of rice, in an dhaner shish, inflorescence of rice, we will see each of them actually are flowers. So each of them are flowers. So inside a flower, inside a rice flower that actually turns into a rice, so inside a rice flower, it contains 6 anthers, and at the center of it, it also contains ovary. So what happens, and the rice plant is self-fertilized by the anthers of it, and the anthers reaches to the ovum, and it falls on the stigma at first, and the stigma are feathery, and when pollen grains fall on it, then from the stigma and then style and then ovary, then it fertilizes the ovary, and this ovary actually turns into a rice. So then we will discuss about how germinal mother cells produces male gametes and female gametes by meiosis cell division. At first, actually we are talking this about animal body, but actually true, this mechanism is also true in case of plant body. So in animal body, among with the other somatic cells, there are some cells which are reserved in the male reproductive organ and female reproductive organ. These reserved cells have the function to produce male gametes or female gametes by meiosis. So these reserved cells are called germinal mother cells. So inside the male reproductive organ we will find the germinal mother cells, and also in the female reproductive organ we will see some germinal mother cells, and actually these mother cells are diploid too. And what they do, they undergo meiosis cell division to produce four gametes, four haploid gametes. So in male body eventually that will turn into sperms, and in female body that will eventually turn into ovum. So this process of producing male gametes and female gametes in reproductive organ, that is called gametogenesis. So the process of producing gamete is called gametogenesis. And then what happens after it, when male gamete and female gamete they fertilize, they undergoes fertilization, they produce a zygote, and this zygote is diploid and it undergoes mitosis cell division to produce a big multicellular body of an animal or plant. Now we will discuss about the advantages and disadvantages of sexual and asexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction has some merit and also some demerits, and asexual reproduction also have some merits, demerits also. So we say at first that sexual reproduction is actually a complex process, and it engages so much energy for this process, but asexual reproduction is very much simpler, comparatively simpler, and it requires much less amount of energy. Sexual reproduction requires a long time to become capable of sexual reproduction. If any animal wants to reproduce sexually, then it must have to reach to the puberty stage. So this is a long period of time, varies from organism to organism, but it needs this amount of time to be sexually capable for reproduction. And after that the female body also conceives, the female animal also conceives this embryo, and this resides in the female body for a long period of time, that is called gestation period. So after a long gestation period a offspring will come into the earth. So this process actually requires a much more amount of time, but in case of asexual reproduction that is comparatively faster process. For example, in case of E. coli bacteria, we know that E. coli bacteria reproduces asexually, and it mitosis cell division, so its generation time is very much less. In favorable condition it can reproduce only in 20 minutes. So within 20 minutes it can produce, it can generate 2 daughter cells, and after more 20 minutes they can produce 4 daughter cells, and after more 20 minutes they can produce 8 daughter cells. So within a day, in favorable or favorable conditions, they can produce billions of bacteria within a short period of time. And then sexual reproduction creates genetic diversity because it produces different type of male gametes and female gametes at different times. So the male gametes or female gametes produced in the body, they are not actually identical to each other. So the offsprings born at different times will not be same genetically. There will be some genetic variation. So this genetic variation actually contributes to the further evolution process. But in case of asexual reproduction, there is no genetic diversity. So by asexual reproduction process, the offsprings are totally identical, are totally cloned to the mother organism. So there is no genetic change to the offspring, so that doesn't contribute to evolution or diversity. And also in case of sexual reproduction, the organisms produced by sexual reproduction are heterozygous. They obtain different heritable traits from mother and from father. so that produces much more vitality in offspring, so that and also the organisms, the offsprings are not totally identical to each other, so they are somewhat different in characteristics. So in case of adverse condition, there is higher chance for survival of this species, because if the adverse condition comes, so uh, there is a possibility that most of the organisms will die, but the organisms having different characteristics will get some advantage and they can survive. And in case of asexual reproduction, it has less vitality in the offsprings, because the offsprings are similar with mother, and it doesn't have any genetic change. So there is a high probability that if adverse condition comes, then uh, all of the organisms, all of the offsprings will die at the same time, because they don't have any kind of different features or advantage features. So now we'll discuss about flowers. We know that what is flower. Flower is the modified organ, modified shoot in the plant that is specially designed for reproductive purpose. So that is special type of modified shoot in plant with special purpose for reproduction. So we know that a flower contains 5 holes or 5 parts. An ideal flower should contain 5 parts, and they are called thalamus or receptacle, number 2 calyx, number 3 corolla, number 4 androecium, and number 5 gynoecium. In your book there is a mistake that the thalamus or receptacle is mistakenly called as floral axis, but that is not true. It should be termed as thalamus or receptacle. So here we see that is thalamus or receptacle, and that is calyx, that is corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. Actually, I have detached these 5 parts from the figure of ideal flower. So that is the figure in your book, the left one, and the right one actually comes from the class 8 book. And for drawing purpose, I will suggest to draw the right figure that you have studied, that you have practiced in class 8. So that is actually ideal for you to draw it, and the left one is somewhat complex to draw, so I would recommend the right one. So we know that an ideal flower contains 5 parts, 5 holes. So now we will discuss about the functions of different holes. At first, the left one, that is called thalamus or receptacle, that should not be confused with floral axis. So thalamus or receptacle, in Bangla that is called pushpopatradhar, and it is round shaped. Actually this part, the top part you see, this part is actually thalamus or receptacle, and the green part is actually pedicel. So we are not talking about pedicel, we are talking about receptacle or thalamus. So the thalamus is round shaped, and it resides at the top of the pedicel, of the green part pedicel at the top, and it holds the other holes consecutively. And what is the function of it? It attaches the other holes one after another, and then from the outer to inner. So the first outermost hole is calyx, that is called and this calyx contains multiple parts, and every unit part found in calyx is called sepal, Brittangsho. And what is its function? It protects internal parts of flower during blooming period, and when there is green in color, this green calyx produces food, and the colorful calyx, when that is not green but of different color, then it helps in pollination by attracting different insects by its color. And now we are discussing about corolla. So the unit part of corolla is called petal, অথবা বাংলায় বলা হয় পাপড়ি. So corolla has unit part called petal, and what is its function? Its function is to protect the internal parts of the flower. Internal part means the androecium and gynoecium, to protect it, and it also helps in pollination by producing different attractive colors so that it attracts the insects and animals. So by this way, by attracting the pollinators, it helps in pollination. So now we're discussing about the male part present in flower, that is called androecium, this male part. So the male part, most often the male part is made up of multiple unit parts. So these unit parts are called stamens. So here we see that the flower drawn in your book, it contains 6 unit parts. So the androecium contains 6 stamens. So each stamen has 2 parts. The top one, here the pink one, that is called anther, and the rod-like tube-like shape, that is called filament. And these anthers, inside these anthers, it produces pollen grains, which pollen grains ultimately produces male gametes. And now we are discussing about the female reproductive part present in flower, that is called gynoecium. Actually, gyne, the Greek word gyne means male, and the Greek word andro, root word andro, means male. So here from the word gyno, we call gyne doctors. That is actually female. The doctors deal with female diseases or female problems. So in gynoecium, it may contain multiple unit parts. So if it contains multiple unit parts, unit part will be called as carpel. Bangla bole গর্ভকেশর. And each carpel has 3 parts. The top one is stigma, and the tube-like is called style, and the egg-like shape, elliptical shaped ovary. So stigma, style, ovary. It contains 3 parts. And what are its function? It produces ovule, and inside the ovule it contains female egg or ovum. And now we can categorize the flowers on different aspects. For example, if we consider that if all holes present inside the plant, inside the flower or not, we can categorize the flowers into 2 categories. We can say some flowers are complete flowers, which contains 5 holes at the same flower, and some flowers will be considered incomplete flower. The flowers that misses or lack one out of these 5 holes, so they are called incomplete flowers. So then on the basis of presence of pedicel, whether the flower contains pedicel or not, we will say some flowers are sessile flowers and some flowers are non-sessile flowers. Inshallah, we will see the examples with photos in next. And then on the basis of presence of androecium and gynoecium, we can categorize them into 3. Some plants are called bisexual, some flowers are bisexual flowers that contains both androecium and gynoecium. Some flowers are unisexual that contains either male part or female part, and some flowers are called neuter flowers. That means this flowers doesn't contain both male and female parts. So now we're saying hibiscus flower as an example of complete flower. So hibiscus is called a complete flower because in the same flower it contains both male part, it both contains pollen grains or male gametes, and it also contains female gametes or ovum on the same flower, on the same plant. So that is, and it also contains the rest of all of the 5 holes. So that is called complete flower. And then when we discuss about datura flower, dhutura flower, inside that we see the 5 parts, For example, we see the green part, that is calyx, and after that we find the corolla. We also find the thalamus, and we also find the male reproductive part, endoecium, and we also contain this sword-like structure, gynoecium, and the unit part is called pistil or carpel. We have said that earlier. So that is why it contains 5 holes, and that is also considered as a complete flower. And now, as an example of incomplete flower, we can say about pumpkin or bottle gourd. So we say that pumpkin flower can be of 2 types. Some flowers are male and some flowers are female. So that is male and that is female pumpkin flower. So here the right one is male and the left one is female. The right one doesn't contain gynoecium. It only contains androecium, and the left one, this doesn't contain male part, but it contains female part. You see the prominent ovary present in the female flower. So this ovary is not present in the male flower. So here we see the right one is a female flower that contains ovary, while the flower doesn't contain the ovary. So also in case of bottle gourd, that is somewhat similar. In the bottle gourd, the left one is male flower and the right one is female flower, and that is the prominent ovary in the female flower. Now, as an example of non-sessile flower, non-sessile flower means that doesn't contain pedicel. We say that most of the flowers contains pedicel. So we are not discussing about sessile flowers. But what are the exceptions? What are the non-sessile flowers? Indian heliotrope. So there is a kind of weed plant present in along the roads or in jungles. So this flower is called Indian heliotrope. There is non-sessile flower because it contains carved inflorescence. So the inflorescence are carved in shape, and inside the inflorescence it contains multiple number of flowers, and the small flowers they're attached with the inflorescence without any pedicel. So it doesn't contain pedicel. It is directly attached. The flowers are directly attached with the inflorescence. That is why it is called a non-sessile flower. And as an example of neuter flower, we can say about sunflower and daisy. So sunflower and daisy, they have both common feature. That is, left one is sunflower and right one is daisy flower. And these flowers have very much resemblance in their shape and construction. Actually, this is not a single flower. That is called actually inflorescence of sunflower. There is inflorescence. So this inflorescence of sunflower contains multiple number of flowers. The outer circles, these flowers are called the ray flowers, and the inside of that, at the center, these small flowers are called disc flowers. So here, so we say that in sunflower, that is actually an inflorescence. This total, that is inflorescence, and inside at the center of this inflorescence, it contains disc florets, and at the outer circle it contains ray florets. Also in daisy, this yellow part is disc florets, and the white parts are called ray florets. And now this disc florets and ray florets have different features. For example, this ray florets doesn't contain any androecium or gynoecium, so these ray florets are neuter, and but the disc florets, the small flowers, they contains both androecium and gynoecium, so they are bisexual. So here we see that the ray florets present in sunflower and daisy, they are neuter flowers, and this special type of inflorescence are called capitulum. So what is inflorescence, we will discuss about at the later class, what is called inflorescence. And among the types of inflorescence, capitulum type of inflorescence is a special type of inflorescence that is seen especially in sunflower and daisy. And now you have a homework. So your homework is draw an ideal flower, label its different roles, and describe functions of them. So today is no more. I am finishing the class. So hope all of you will remain safe. আজকের মতো ক্লাস এখানেই শেষ। আসসালামু আলাইকুম।